Define nostalgia.
The noun nostalgia is usually defined as a wistful desire to return in thought or in fact to a former time in one's life, to one's home or homeland, or to one's family and friends, a sentimental yearning for the happiness of a former place or time. For more, ask me to give you more definitions for not.
Mid-90s is a healthy look at nostalgia. We live in a time, in a culture that is obsessed with nostalgia. Most companies, most films, focus on it as an emotional trigger to get you to impulsively imbibe and ingest more of their product. They use nostalgia as a consumerist method or tool. Whereas someone like Jonah Hill, and A24 as a whole, really, as a entire company, view nostalgia more as something that is not just deeply introspective or retrospective, but as something that is deeply meditative, and something that might not be entirely comforting, something that is both damaging and beneficial. Mid-90s, Jonah Hill's directorial debut in 2018, it was probably my most anticipated film of the entire year. And just for those of you who think that A24 is super mainstream, I live in a pretty populated Florida city. Did not come within 30 miles of me. I was not able to see this film in theaters. I had to wait till it was released on home video or streaming, whatever the cool kids say these days. But Mid-90s was a film I was looking forward to more than any other one. Just the concept of it. Maybe I was searching for that kind of therapeutic nostalgia as well. Maybe I was trying to look back at a crystallized version of time and figure out something about myself, something that was dynamically becoming. What I got from this film was something that was incredibly full of static being. Maybe that's poetic in and of itself, but whew. Okay, before we get into it, Mid-90s is... I wanted it to be a lot more cathartic than it was. Because this is truly a snapshot of my childhood as well. I grew up with skaters, I grew up with punk kids, you know. I grew up in a drug culture, in a slacker culture. It was like a lot of fun, and I knew these kids. Like, I know variations of these, I guess, 90s to mid-2000s archetypes. I know them. I was them. I was one of them. I'm sure that I was a lot like 4th grade, of course. You know, I mean, probably. So mid-90s I wanted to be a lot more cathartic than it was, and I also feel Jonah Hill wanted it to be a lot more cathartic than it was as well. The problem with Jonah Hill is also reflected in his acting performances. His influences are far too thick to be properly consumed without being reminded of the influence itself. So he obviously watched Kids, and decided to make a film that was far less powerful and far less brave or courageous than Kids. You don't want to make a film where you remind us of better films. There are a lot of people who have a lot of influences, Guillermo del Toro, Quentin Tarantino, but the way that they translate their influences are through either deconstructions or through reinterpretations. Jonah Hill does not have that quality yet as a filmmaker. This is a first film, and he has a lot of amateur mistakes in them. And The Kid's mistake is one of them. You don't want to remind me of a film that broke my heart while I'm watching a film that seems to be kind of afraid to really come into its own emotionally, really allow itself to dynamically become something beyond itself. The other thing is that he's definitely invested in the visual stylings of Martin Scorsese. There's a scene that pays direct homage to Goodfellas, where Ray Liotta is leading Lorraine Bracco through the restaurant, through the back door, saying hey to everybody. It's a beautiful shot. And that shot is emulated in Mid-90s, where the character called Fuck Shit, there goes my monetization, thank you Jonah Hill, the character called Fuck Shit enters the party, goes grabs some 40s, says hey to the girls, is walking around, he's walking by himself. And it's a direct homage to Goodfellas, a direct homage. The only problem is it misses the point of why that scene worked in Goodfellas. That scene didn't just work in Goodfellas because it was a long tracking shot, that it was an exhaustive shot, that it was incredibly well choreographed. Those are some of the reasons why it sticks in your brain, but the reason the shot works is that our perspective is Lorraine Bracco, not Ray Liotta. We are pretty amazed and pretty romanced and by the charisma, by the fact that he knows everybody. That's our point of reference. That is our perspective. In mid-90s, that scene would have actually worked really well if Stevie, the main character, walked in with him and was kind of like in awe of this situation. I don't know why Jonah Hill didn't do that, because that is why that Goodfellas scene works at all. That is that's the visual point of the scene that he aped, of the scene that he stole, of the sequence that he lifted or borrowed. And yet it misses the actual functionality of that scene. And it's really full of a lot of those moments. Very strong John Cassavetes influences as well. Some of the dialogue feels incredibly real and authentic, to the point of maybe Jonah let the camera linger. I know that Judd Apatow makes films in a John Cassavetes-like way. So, and I know Jonah Hill has worked with Judd Apatow several times, and maybe has learned a few things from him, but the John Cassavetes influence is way too thick. Again, the influences are all too thick. But influences are forgivable in a first-time film. What's unforgivable is the fact that, spoilers now for mid-90s. Mid-90s ends as an after-school special, as the best possible scenario. So, the theme of the film is, do I have value? What is my value? Stevie is trying to find value as a young male, growing up in a time that doesn't seem to bear a true characteristic. In a time that is not profound, is not great, that is not particularly anything. He is trying to find his own value, and he's finding it within this friend group. He's trying to find value. He's trying to feel valuable. He's trying not to punish himself. He's trying to just find value. I don't know how many times I have to say that. That is the primary theme of this film. Does Stevie have value, and where can he find it? Jonah Hill ends this film very cowardly with a after-school special car crash, a drunken car crash. There's actually wonderful editing right before the car crash, but it fails to live up to anything. And all of his friends are in there like, you take the hardest punches, you know you don't have to do that. It's so saccharine. It is so over-sentimental. It is really incredibly over-sentimental. This film had nothing powerful to say. Nothing powerful to say. When it tried to have a powerful statement, it was so heavy-handed that it was just beyond sentimental, beyond stagey, beyond inauthentic. It was just kind of insulting. I think Jonah Hill shows a lot of promise in this film. I just think that mid-90s could have been something amazing. I think mid-90s could have been masterful. But Jonah Hill lacks a clear purpose, a clear direction. I do appreciate that it's a healthy look at nostalgia. What I consider to be an unhealthy look at nostalgia is one that just plays on emotional triggers. One that just reminds you of, hey, this was a thing, that was a thing, remember when you were young and it was crazy? You know, those moments exist in mid-90s. They're inescapable when you are studying nostalgia. But the point of Jonah Hill studying nostalgia is studying what shaped you in your past. What helped you find value? When you felt completely worthless, how did you survive that? How did you find that value? There are challenging moments in this film, of course. I mean, it's not a completely cowardly film, but I would call it a film that lacks any direction, any purpose, any clear artistic aim. Also, any clear artistic character. It's inconsistent. It's inconsistent in its thematics. It's inconsistent in its tone. It is very, very much the work of a first-time director. And it's a little tragic in that respect, because it could have been a lot better. But I'll be in the theater for his next film. Jonah Hill has impressed me a lot in his own ways. I mean, it's a directorial debut. We can't expect everyone's debut to be on par with the debuts of Terrence Malick or Sofia Coppola or, God forbid, Orson Welles. We can't expect that from everyone. Some people have to grow, and I think that this is a great starting point for Jonah Hill as a director. And, because I just brought up John Cassavetes, no one talks about shadows, but we all talk about faces, right? I think that Jonah Hill's next film will be something really special. And I think we should all keep an ear out for it and pay attention to it. Mid-90s was completely forgettable. That's the problem. It wasn't special, and I believe that it thought that it was. I believe that it was too involved in its own scope, that it thought was grand but was actually rather limiting, and everything was just far too easily digestible about it. Like, there are moments that are challenging, but those challenging moments aren't rewarding because the film didn't earn them, you know? But thank you very much. My name is Zachary Conan. This has been an Ashtray chat and review of Mid-90s. In the comments, leave what you thought of the film. Leave your thoughts about it, about Jonah Hill's direction, about every performance was great. I really enjoyed the kids. Jonah Hill made me care about them quite a bit. All of the main character troupe of kids, and Catherine Waterston was wonderful, and the actor who played the older brother was actually very good, very great. I might give him the best performance of the movie. He really, really impressed me. And feel free to subscribe to the channel and hang out around here, because we do some fun stuff around here. Thank you guys for watching. My name is Zachary Conan. I hope you've been having a really good week and you've been watching some really good movies. In the comments, leave what was the last great movie you saw. I'm curious.